Thank you. We're going to be working on design stuff today. So this might be a class that people need to rewatch. It might be a class
Okay.
we use a word in a future opportunity that people you know, need to come back to. These first 3 classes will be like that.
Yeah. When Kristen teaches workshops, she normally, this is her first day, she's kind of comprised, right, into one, or like your first.
We do it one of 2 ways. We either do a 4-week series where we meet once a week for 3 hours, or we do a 2-day series where it's 2 8-hour days, because there's a lot of information and there's a lot of exercises that go into creating abstract work. And, you know, it's a lot of heavy information. So this is how we split it up. And then moving forward, we're going to just kind of tackle things subject by subject, which will be a little easier to pop in and out of.
Right. Okay, I think we're ready to rock and roll. So go ahead and get started. Other people will roll in, but
yeah. You manage that. I'm going to do this. So hold on a second. This is always the part where I'm really slow on, and I'm sorry for everyone.
Don't be sorry. Technology is evil.
So I do use a lot of slideshows because, you know, good abstract art means that we're going to look at a lot of different artists' work, not just my work. And so today we're going to go over some pretty basic design concepts, and then we're going to work an exercise from each kind of category so that you guys have opportunities to work on some of these things. So the big question for today's class is obviously what makes abstract art great? It's a really good question. I want to go back to the definition of abstract art because I think it's really important, which is that it's art that does not attempt to represent external reality, but seeks to achieve its effect using shapes, forms, colors, and textures. One of the problems that people have when they make abstract art is they think that shapes, forms, colors, and textures are where you make good abstract art. And that's not actually where you make good abstract art. Hold on, now you're being a baby. What actually makes good abstract art are these 5 kind of characteristics that across the board, strangely, most really professional abstract artists believe that good abstract art has balance, it has proportion, it has rhythm, emphasis, and unity. I always like to add a 6th one, which is what I call surprise. I think it's really important to understand where surprise plays into really good abstract art. So individually, what is balance? Because we know what balance is physically, but what is it in regards to actual artwork? And balance is the distribution of the visual weight of objects, colors, texture, and space. I have included an example. Hold on, my computer's okay. This is one of my favorite abstract painters, Dorothy Frat. She died in the 80s. But she definitely has a collection and a group of people who are working to share her work with the world. Something that's really special about Dorothy's work is obviously that she really uses a lot of really bright, beautiful colors. She uses one of my favorite color pairings, which is fluorescent red and that green gold color there. But what is really special about this seemingly simplistic abstract painting is very balanced. It's very intriguing in that she used super bright colors. She paired those colors with dark black and this like green gold. And the composition itself has balance. When you look at it, you feel comforted. You don't feel like something is, you know, unnerving about it. Dorothy's work in general includes large abstract shapes like this, paired with vibrant colors. Her work is really quite extraordinary for being somewhat simplistic, right? Her work is the epitome of perfectly balanced work. So then proportion, our second one. Proportion, different than balance. It describes how the sizes of different parts of a piece of art or design relate to each other. It has to do with size and scale of various elements in a painting. This is an important one. People think proportion means that you're creating marks and textures and shapes and lines that are proportional to each other. But you know what? good abstract art can mean that one thing is really, really tiny and one thing is really, really large. It doesn't have to necessarily mean that they are of similar size and proportion. What it means is that you're cognizant of the concept of proportion and that you're intentional about how you use it. Mark Rothko, his work is extraordinary. We know his work is extraordinary. It's extraordinary for a lot of reasons, but proportion is actually one of the things about Rothko's work that is so beautiful. He had a formula, like most artists do. And a lot of his work involved really large squares that were then juxtaposed against some kind of smaller mark. And this particular one, which is one of his older ones, less vibrant ones, it's actually one of my favorites. The use of the really small lines at the bottom, the varying size of the lines are really beautiful to me. Also, you know, he did a really good job using pink and red to offset the weird green and blue. You know, we know that Rothko was a master. That's not a question. But his pieces, when you look at them, not only are they about color, but they really are about proportion. So rhythm is actually what I think is the most important. It's what I focus on the most. I want people to look at my work and feel that it moves and that they are moving with my work. And so rhythm in a painting is defined as creating marks, colors, lines, shapes, and a continuous and repeating pattern. The intention is to move the viewer's eye around a painting. That to me is something I think about with all of my work. How am I moving a viewer's eye through my work so that they are engaged in the work? Abstract art seems to be this thing that either you glance over it, after 3 minutes, you've decided you know what it's about and you move on, or you sit down on the bench in front of it and spend some time with it. Okay, we're starting off early with the cough drops. Clearly, I've been working for 3 hours. Okay, so Eva McGill Oliver is an amazing abstract painter. Her work, again, plays with rhythm very well. She collages a lot of, as you can see with this piece, some of the layers are collaged layers. She uses watercolor a lot and washes as her base layers, and then brings in these really intriguing shapes and lines that are based really out of life. You know, they're based out of things that we recognize, but she brings them into new environments. Something that's really extraordinary about this piece that I included here is the way that the really thin lines are weighted with these thicker lines. You're not just, it's intentional. They're there for a reason. They're creating part of a composition that is necessary. I think sometimes abstract artists get lost in just the creation part of it and stop thinking about, what is my intention with this? What is the viewer going to take from this painting? Eva's work is beautiful. She's really easy to follow on Instagram. I will put everybody's Instagrams in here. Dorothy Frat even has an Instagram, even though she died in the 80s, so that you can start to see how varied abstract art can be, but also how quite beautiful it can be. Emphasis is another one of my favorites. It's the idea, it's a strategy that aims to draw the viewer's attention to a specific design element. So it could be one little tiny piece of a painting. It can be the whole painting. This is where surprise, for me, emphasis and surprise work hand in hand. You're emphasizing something that is drawing using rhythm, drawing your viewer's eye through your painting, and then something is kind of a little surprise for them. This is one of my favorite Dutch abstract painters. Her paintings are really dark, they're dirty, which is something that I really have a hard time with. They're super loose. She actually was a architect and a designer before she became a painter, but her relationship to color really shows us how emphasis can be used to draw your eye around a painting. You know, that large green spot down in the right corner with the black marks, it's so bold, it's so big, you immediately are drawn to look at that. But then she uses these tiny little lines of hot pink to draw your eye around the rest of the composition. And as you're looking at these and naturally following these pink dots, you come down to this like mirrored mark of this green paint again, smaller, thinner lines, and then it comes down to this hot pink line. There is a lot going on here, and she does a very good job of using negative space also to make sure that it's a balanced composition. It's a really, her work is really beautiful. It's really worth looking at. She only created for a couple of years and then stopped for some reason. So seeing new work is hard to find. And then unity. Unity happens when the work has a sense of completion and every element serves its purpose in relationship to others. Jason Craighead has some of the most extraordinary work. His pieces are very, very large. We're talking 10 feet by 10 feet. They involve these really, you know, kind of wild marks. He has a very distinct color palette. And, you know, his pieces look like everything was intentional. It was well thought. He's known for having a really long process and really thinking out his composition before he makes it. But, you know, it's funny to look at something that is essentially a collection of scribbles and paint splotches and say, wow, that really looks unified. I have a feeling when I look at this. He does a really good job of minimal color that has purpose, color that, you know, is there on the painting for a reason. He uses a lot of like hot pinks with his tans and his whites, which are really quite beautiful. His work is very distinct. It's very beautiful. There is clearly like a semblance of layers. I don't know the exact size of this piece, but like I said, his our entire walls. These are not small pieces that are done on paper. They're huge, giant pieces that have a lot of thought and kind of concept. Okay. Taking into consideration those foundational pieces of like good concept for you, we're going to start with exercises that kind of focus on each of the hold on, I'm going to do this. Give me a little second. There we go. Sorry, everybody. Again, a little slow on the uptake, but that's fine. And then we're gonna look at this. Here we are. Awesome. Okay. So our first exercise is actually a drawing exercise that just about everybody knows how to do. I think that it's important though, because lines are always going to be part of the process of abstract art. A lot of abstract artists do a lot of layers of other layers and then end with some kind of drawing of some object. But we're going to start with a loosening up process for us and something that we should all know how to do, which is a blind contour drawing. The thing about this, I do not believe in drawing well. I know Leah does. She likes to spend a lot of time doing it. I believe in trying to access that child version of yourself, which is about letting go of what the piece looks like. So blind contour drawing is a great opportunity for me not to get too stuck in that process. I can draw very well. I just choose that if I'm going to be drawing as part of my abstract pieces, that it's at least going to be something that is loose, you might say, loose. So you only need a piece of paper and some sort of writing utensil right now. You're going to find a different place to look. My suggestion is always, if you don't have an interesting thing, like I have a full studio full of interesting things, you can always look at somebody's face. Normally in my classes, you're gonna draw the person's face in front of you. You're not sitting across from someone. You can draw my face, I don't care. We're gonna do this though, it's gonna be a timed exercise because I think that we can get too caught up in, sorry, I'm gonna use the timer on my phone. We can get too caught up on how we're supposed to be filling our time with this. Just give me a second. Okay. I like to do 30 seconds. That feels pretty crazy to people, but I think that, you know, this is about creating energy. It's about bringing something into your paper that's not that important. So I'm going to start a timer. I want you guys to focus on an object. I'm going to show you the first time, and then we'll do it 2 more times after that, and then we'll move on so you don't have to worry too much about it. The intention is you're not going to lift up whatever drawing item you're using. I'm using a piece of water-soluble crayon. Obviously, not getting too caught up in it. It's hot. It's a bright pink. I'm doing a pink project right now, so it's hanging out. And then your intention is to stare solely at the object that you are drawing and not lift your drawing choice off the paper. We're not trying to make it represent anything. What we're trying to do is be present in our body, be present in the space that we're in, and access the things that we need to access inside of ourselves to do these next couple of exercises. So I'm going to show you it one time, and then I'm going to set a timer for you guys to do it a couple of times before we move on to our next exercise. I'm going to set the timer for myself. Okay. I feel like I'm just drawing a chair that my dog is actually, I probably should have drew my dog, right? Considering she's really a lot more interesting than this weird chair. I do have a chair thing though, let's be real. That's actually one of the more exciting things about drawing abstract art is that you don't have to, you can have weird things about a chair or a cup and draw them a lot and over again. I used to draw a lot of cups. Okay. As you can see from the video, it's not that exciting of a drawing. I often will use a water-soluble utensil so that when I'm done with my drawing, I can just, I'll probably just make sure that my brush wants to be used. Okay. Then I can just kind of smear it around. We're not, this is not the base of our painting. I'm not doing a chair painting. It's just a loosening up. Okay. So now I'm going to reset my timer, and I'm going to have you guys find your object that you're going to be focused on. If you feel like it's moving too slow, 30 seconds can feel like forever sometimes. Feel free to go back over top of the concept. Slow yourself down though. The intention here is that you are present fully with the experience of focusing on the item and drawing it. Is everybody ready? You don't have to say yes, you can just shake your head. Okay, here we go, guys. And start. Okay, you can stop. Okay, now here's my suggestion. We're going to do another round, but I want you to do it on top of the drawing you already made. Okay, this is not about creating something that is extraordinary or spectacular. This really is just about being present in our body. So find a new object. I will find a new object as well. I found a new utensil. I like to do my second layer in something that looks a little different so I can tell the difference. It's not really that important. And then I'm going to start the timer for us all. Okay, is everybody ready? Yeah, yeah, you are. Okay, here we go. And again. Okay, that's our 30 seconds. Oh, that second one, I mean, wow, it's really beautiful. It's a bunch of squiggly squagglies for sure. Okay. Let me look at my notes again real quick. I was very prepared this time. Boss. Okay. So this time we're going to use paint. Okay. The intention of this exercise in particular is to understand size, shape, color. Because we haven't gone through the color portion of our education program, I'm just going to suggest that you choose 3 colors. Again, choose like 2 warm colors, 1 cool color, meaning choose 2 from the red and pink and yellow family, choose 1 from the blue green family, or choose 2 blue and green and 1 other. We're going to use whatever kind of brushes you want to use here. The key here though is that we're going to be basically doing 3 marks with, I'm going to use kind of a watered down acrylic. I'm going to use a yellow. We're going to be working on some very, not quick, but like kind of basic paintings. I am feeling this blue and this yellow for some reason, which are really weird colors for me. But you know.
Krista,
Yeah.
is it okay to use watercolor on this exercise, or would you rather acrylic?
It is entirely fine to use whatever you would like. The
Okay.
idea here is, and watercolor might actually be a little easier for some people if that's your preferred preference. Acrylic just happens to be mine. I'm actually going to water it down quite a bit. And then I am going to choose my brushes. So again, this is water that has that flow in it so that it doesn't deteriorate my pigments too much. I am using a paper plates today, but normally I have 2 different pans. One is my pinks and one is my blues, and then I mix all my colors there. You're going to want to choose 3 different utensils. So that could be 3 different sizes of brushes, or it could be 3 different types of brushes. It could be, like I said, a spatula, you know, so I'm going to use one of them. It's going to be this weird brush that I've destroyed because I'm terrible. One's going to be this big marking brush that I'm in love with right now. Although I feel like the smaller one might be a better option. Maybe the smaller one. And then my third thing is going to be my scraper because it's my preference. So, you know, the first thing you want to do is test out your colors and make sure that you like them together. I always like to start with like a little, you know, just checking them out together. That is, we're going to try and make our best composition using only these 3 colors, only our 3 brushes, and essentially kind of, you know, very minimal marks here. So I like to make sure that in my mind, while I think that these colors look great together, that they actually do. So I usually put them at the top, you know, up here. You can see I'm just working them together to make sure that I like them. We won't be doing a lot of layers here. This is very minimalist. Sometimes abstract painting can be more difficult minimally than it can be maximally, because we're not going to be covering anything up. We're not going to be working in layers like that. We're going to have to trust our gut, and we're going to have to really work with some negative space here. So the idea is that you're going to do essentially 1 mark per color with its utensil. So you're essentially working with 3 marks, okay, in your paper that you need to decide first and foremost. When we talk about proportion, you're going to need a variance of proportion, meaning some big marks and some small marks. You're going to need to decide which of your colors is the one that you really want to be focused on. What is the emphasis of this painting? I tend to like to be very big and bold with 1 color, like 1 temperature, and then use tiny marks with the opposite that kind of accentuate it. I'm actually going to start with orange because I'm in an orange phase in my life. And I'm going to use my scraper, which I know can be the biggest, I can make the biggest marks out of. And I'm going to start my first mark. Yeah, let's get some more paint on the paper, huh? My first mark is going to be with this scraper, and I'm going to go across the entire page. Once I do that, give me a second. Clearly I'm struggling today. I'm struggling in everything today. I struggled in working in the food cart. It's all of it's a struggle. Okay, I'm gonna add this. Okay, my scrape, perfect. Okay, sorry everybody. Okay, this is my mark. Okay, now to balance out that I've weighted down my page with this orange and kind of this bigger mark, I am going to choose my second mark to be this blue, which is an ideal mate for orange. So it works out great. This is a cerulean blue, which really makes me happy. I'm going to do a side circle, just coming in. Okay. And then got my last brush in my yellow. And I originally thought I might make some little hash marks or something, but I think that what I'm going to do is a couple of little lines. Okay. So I'm intentionally leaving this space up here, which does have some of my other paint in it, but leaving this space white as a way of balancing out what I'm covering and what I'm not covering. You can choose to cover the whole page in one color and then lay marks on top of that, or you can choose to have some negative space. This is also going to be another exercise that is semi-timed, because I don't want you guys to get so focused on your decision making here. It's supposed to be somewhat intuitive. So if you have your paper or your surface in front of you, I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes. Has everybody picked their 3 colors? Yes? I got lots of heads, nods. That looks good. Okay, good. So then I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes. You can do as many marks as you want to do, but use the same utensil with each color. And then someone, hopefully one of you, would love to share on WhatsApp the progress of this exercise. We're going to do this one a couple of times because it really helps you think about proportion and emphasis. Is everybody ready? I'm going to get another piece of paper. Hold on. I prepped myself today. I took care of business. Okay, here goes our 2 minutes. And go. Coming down the pike, everybody. You're about down to 10 seconds. Okay, we've hit our 2 minutes. Okay, a little feedback from folks. Did anybody find this exercise to be difficult? And you can unmute yourself and actually tell me.
Nope.
No. Did anybody
No.
come up with something really brilliant then? I mean, if it wasn't difficult, that means you came up with something really great.
I thought so.
Rebecca just posted, you should take a look across the thread. And here's Nina's. Yeah, I think these are neat.
Oh, I love the drawings. I'm so into the drawing.
Right?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yes, I love the people who came over their drawings. It's perfect.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I'm into it. Okay. So, did any of you feel like you just needed a ton more layer options, or that you couldn't get a good composition with just 3 marks?
I wanted to use another tool and I cheated and I used 4.
Hey, good for you.
Oh, thanks.
I'm not against rule breakers at all, so you never have to worry about that.
Yep.
Had 2 brushes, so I was stuck with the 2 and it felt hard.
Yeah, it can be kind of hard sometimes to come to the minimalist version of abstract painting and actually have it say or look like something that is good and entertaining to you. Our next exercise actually is going to use the same pieces that we already have. The idea though with it is teaching so here's my second one. I am actually not happy with my second one. I'm not as pleased by it. I actually struggle with minimalist kind of abstract work because I'm so used to being able to really go like all in. Hey, no, I'm telling you no. Sorry, my dog is chaos in the world. It's okay, she's just being a turd.
She's a dog.
She's a dog, and my studio is at ground level. It's in a very popular place that people really like to go. Okay. So our next thing that we're going to do is we're going to work with what we already have. The idea here is we're going to do several layers. You have this, it's the same kind of concept though, where you're starting with 3 colors. Your 3 colors have utensils that are specific to the colors. You're going to be working in alternating layers. And then we're going to let our paintings dry entirely. And we're going to come in with white paint and start adding negative space and choosing the parts that we want to keep. Some things that make this exercise a little more fun. This is where we're actually going to spend most of our time today, is working. I would suggest working on several pieces at once. Choose a color palette that you want to work with across several pieces. And don't be afraid to change the direction of your paper. Don't be afraid to, do interesting things. That's why we're going to start with the ones that we've already created. The idea here is we're going to take the emphasis down to a very few pieces that parts of our painting that we really like. Some of that though is made by overdoing it a little bit. Something that Flora Bowley, who's an abstract painter who teaches online, says a lot is, if you like doing something, do it repeatedly. I don't always agree that I think you can overdo it, but the sentiment is, everything can be covered up. So we're going to work on top of what we're already working on, and we're going to work on building layers. Some keys about building layers. Work your warm colors at the same time. Let them dry before adding a cool color. What does that mean? Well, we all know that we don't want mud. Mud is what happens when you mix colors together that aren't of the same family unintentionally. That's going to happen if you have wet paint. Or if you're working, you know, blue and orange wet together are not going to be beautiful. So you're going to want to let your layers dry. That's why I use acrylic paint a lot, is that acrylic paint can be where, oh, we'll go on top of this guy because this guy's kind of fun. So we're going to be working through some layers. This is going to be a process that we're going to work on for a little bit. I have 4 pieces that I'm going to alternate between so that I can let things dry in between. I'm going to use the same color palette on all of them. And then I'm going to show you guys after it dries how to use white paint to come in and mask out new designs. So any questions during this time, this process, everyone? It's okay, it's just chitty chat time, you know. We're gonna take probably 15 minutes here. I'm gonna work on 4 pieces and we're gonna let them dry a little bit. And then we're gonna come back through and start masking. Does that sound good to everyone?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, teacher.
Just checking to make sure everything works for everyone. There's a lot going on here today. Sorry, we have a new show going up this weekend, so it's got a lot going on. We have lots of noises and weird things happening.
Would you put acrylic paint on watercolor?
I would put watercolor on acrylic, but not necessarily acrylic on watercolor.
Is there a reason why?
Yeah. Watercolor is the whole point of watercolor is that when you add water, it invigorates the pigment. Acrylic will dry and not disrupt what your watercolor is doing, but your acrylic will ultimately modify what your watercolor looks like. I use watercolor on top of acrylic a lot, actually, because there are a couple of colors that I feel like look better in watercolor than they do acrylics, like say Opera Pink, which is one of my favorites. So that's just been my experience. I usually don't want my underpainting modified at that point. Okay.
Okay, just because I put watercolor first, so
Yeah.
I'll just.
And check it out. I'm the queen of saying, like, try it out, see what happens. Like, maybe you're going to learn real quick how much water will be able to be added to your acrylic, right? The idea here is, you know, you're going to put acrylic, in theory, you would put acrylic white paint on top. I'm going to try and keep most of the abstract painting lessons to acrylic paint, watercolor paint, and then some sort of mark making utensil, just because I want everybody to be able to participate. But as we were discussing, we didn't do a very good job of telling people what to bring today. So
I would use watercolor pencil then on top. We're using the same colors again.
yeah, we're using
Okay.
the same. I would use the same colors again because you know the palette. The real magic comes in when we start adding the white and really finding what we want to emphasize, you know? And also, really magical moments are going to be created in this layering process, you know? Changing up your method of applying paint and changing up your colors will help that. Where did my scraper go? If you guys knew how often I lost my scraper. This is hilarious, Audrey. I have lost my scraper while actively using it. Well, here it is. Because I like the one. The one. How many people get attached to just one thing? That's the one.
Yes.
Yeah, right?
Yes, the paintbrush I have in my hand right now is all I ever want to use.
I feel the same way. I actually kind of force myself to try new things because I'm always just like, well, I know this. I know how this works, right? Ooh. Okay. Man, I used all of my favorite colors and now I don't want to cover up any of it. I tend to do that though. Like I remember my very first art show was like a raw show. So it was a really big group show. And people kept coming up to me and being like, I was told to come over here. You're the color lady. And I was like, yeah, I guess that's a pretty distinctive way to describe my work. The color lady. Another technique I definitely don't want to forget to suggest is splattering to create little dots. So I used to really covet paintings like abstract painters that had these really great splatter marks. And I really couldn't figure out like how to make my paintings have the same quality of mark. And what I have figured out over time is whether it's watercolor or acrylic, watercolor actually usually does better in splattering, is if you use the handle of another brush and
Oh, stop it.
this is the best way. This seems to be the most controlled. Don't get me wrong. I still get paint everywhere. I don't pretend I'm anything less than a painter, you know. But don't be afraid to add some splatters to your bottom layers, you know. They're great emphasis marks. And they're fun to do. I mean, obviously Pollock made an entire career out of making splatters. Man, I'm really happy with these. Okay. Oh yeah. Les, that's really nice.
Oh, thanks.
That green is really nice. It looks really nice with kind of the wispy marks. I'm into the wispy marks. I'm going to try to be better about checking in on the What's Up app. So we're going to stop in about 5 minutes to let our pieces dry. I have one more exercise that I'm going to show you before we, while we let our stuff dry. And this exercise includes paper. And since I didn't tell anyone to bring paper, I want to give you guys this exercise in case you want to do it, or if you have paper there, you can do it. You can also use magazines and things like that. So I'm going to give you until 4:25, 4:26, or I guess the next 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll let our underlayers start drying. And if you guys wouldn't mind putting some pictures of your underlayers on the WhatsApp app, that would be really great. I'm going to do the same.
Oh.
Oh yes, the dots and the lines are so good, Jeannie. I love it.
Thank you. Oh, I love that. That's beautiful.
I used 3 warm colors and 1 cool color. I used just for ease and because those are what I like. Oh yes. Pashmina, I love all the marks. I love the fearlessness with them. Try making a couple of just bigger swashes through, bigger washes, just
Okay.
something a little different. That's all. I'm known for being a teacher that if somebody uses like too much of one color, I'll take the color away. You know, comfort is to be disrupted. I'll be back in just 1 minute. I'm going to go refill my coffee, and then we're going to do our last little exercise today. Excellent. Okay. Uh-huh. Oh yeah, I know. Thank you though. Well, because we're gonna work after that.
Oops.
I appreciate it. These are really fun. I feel like they're like my 80s kids' dream come true. Okay. I'm going to move these to the side and I'm just going to demo this exercise for you all. I tend to work in my sketchbook at nighttime. It's probably like relaxing my brain, you know? I like do a lot of watch TV and stuff. So if you're like me and you decompress that way, this exercise I'm going to show you is a really great way to do that. I, this year, started this kind of journey where I read a book by Joseph Albers, who did artwork at the same time as Rothko, but who's renowned for teaching color theory. We're going to talk a lot more about Joseph Albers next time. But in reading Joseph Albers' book and going kind of through this color journey, one of the things that he really emphasized was about taking the time to work with colored paper rather than paints because the color is consistent. His primary argument is that color is deceitful, and that one color will look different next to two different colors. That your brain doesn't have the ability to consistently know what that color is supposed to look like. In abstract painting, you can work on your composition and really exercise your composition by working with paper. Eva McGill Oliver, who is that artist that I showed you, one of the artists that I showed you earlier, has an exercise that you use. You cut shapes out of paper. Typically, I wouldn't use colored paper for this. Typically, I honestly would go through a Glamour magazine and pull out large swathes of patterns because I love the way the crazy patterns are and I generally don't like the ads, right? And I would use that for this exercise. You're going to create 3 different sizes of geometric shapes, okay? You're going to create a bunch of shapes on paper. You're going to put them into 3 different piles, and then you're going to work your compositions using these shapes. What's nice about this process, and something that I have done, is that you don't have to glue it down. You can reuse the same shapes, create entirely new compositions, work on how you're going to develop your relationship to the actual compositions on your paper. And then generally what I would do is then paint a version of it in my sketchbook. And then basically it's like a puzzle that I redo. So, you know, I am not always the most creative guy, but, you know, you're going to create a variety of shapes. I tend to do a lot of angular stuff, you know, big triangles. I also use a lot of lines in my work when I work like this. This is something that I have been doing every night recently. I will show you guys some of my actual compositions so that you get kind of a better idea of what I've been doing, because I think I have a stack of them over there. And then we're going to sort these into the piles kind of by shape, meaning smaller-ish, larger-ish, medium-ish. You're going to use a variety of colors. I have honestly used watercolor on white paper to create color swatches and then done this exercise. It's a collaging exercise, really. But the intention of it is, if using the same materials and trying to make different decisions, you know, you have the ability to rework it without it like being permanent, so to say. I tend to do a lot of these marks. So I'm going to cut these out while you guys are finishing up your layers that you're working on. And I'm going to let me tell you something. I have a hole punch at home that does little tiny circles so that I don't have to try and do it this way. This way doesn't work. No. You will see photos of how my weird little shapes look. But it's what I got right now. It's also interesting, I find, when I work with colored paper rather than paint, I tend to explore colors better. Mainly because, like I said earlier, like you tend to use the same color over and over again. And it helps me break out of color ruts when I'm creating work that is too reminiscent of itself, so to say. Sorry, dog. My dog will look like I just beat her. She was just offended that I dropped paper on her head. Okay. So when I look at these and I start separating them into different size piles, what I realize is that I don't have enough smaller pieces, right? I only have these weird little knot circles that I made. And I need some more variants. Another way that I do this exercise beyond the colored paper is, honestly, I keep scraps of all of my paintings and I work with my own scraps.
Okay.
So when I work with my own scraps, I tend to rip the paper rather than cut it. That's just the way that part has worked well for me. I like the raw edge, not everybody does. But it's definitely something to think about. Okay, here we go. Got it. Okay. I got some more smaller pieces. We'll get this stuff out of the way. Oh, almost forgot the best color. Okay. Okay, remember that rhombuses exist to make rhombuses too. Okay. So I have all these piles of these shapes. And the way that this exercise goes is, that you're going to alternate between the different shapes on your paper and work on your composition, trying to find the way that the composition looks the best. I tend to start with bigger pieces, and look at my bigger pieces, which in this situation is a big yellow triangle, and see, where does starting with some of these bigger pieces kind of creating the most page take up, right? So this is really where you start to think of proportion. You start to think of, like, how is my painting balanced, or my piece balanced? And what kind of composition am I creating? I think a lot, not only about balance, but also about tension. Like that point in a painting where something looks like it should be touching, but it's not. And you're just going to work through some of your compositions and see how moving different things affects, the way that it's perceived. What is the difference between this purple circle being close to the edge of this yellow triangle versus being close to the edge of this yellow triangle, or in between both of them? We try to stay away from working in the middle of our paper. You try to stick to the general design concepts of 1/3, 2/3, odd numbers, like I said earlier. And the idea with this exercise is that you go through and rearrange your objects that you have created for yourself and try to find the best composition possible. That's going to be different for everybody. Whoa. How are people's underlayers going? Have you started putting pictures of them in the app?
Yes.
Ooh, I'm really liking these as they get more and more added to them. Is everybody letting them dry at this point? Probably, yeah? You're gonna shake your head.
Yeah.
I think mine are actually almost ready, which is really exciting. I'm gonna work on this just a little bit longer, this composition, and then I'm gonna send you guys a photograph of it. You can tell me yay or nay, you know, as you start to develop an eye. I like to think that I have good taste in things, but you never know.
Carista, do you ever actually just use the pieces like that? Because that looks so cool.
It looks so cool, right?
Yeah.
You know, you can. It's totally a style that people really like. It looks really great. I think that it's a really fun way to do it. It's just, yeah, sometimes I do. Like I said, I kept some. Like, so I've been working on, I'm gonna walk around the corner. You guys won't see me because I got to get into my little table, but I got a good size. These are all collaged pieces, you know, and all like experimentations of like similar concepts. They're often inspirations for other paintings. It's also kind of new still, because I'm working with this, like I said, so Joseph Albers makes the argument that the same composition in two different colors will make the different colors look different. So like the green looks different underneath the pink than it looks underneath the blue, right? You can't really see it on this screen, but they look like they're completely different shades when you look at them in real life. And so I've been really working on a lot of that. I keep them, I have them. So they're used for a lot of things. Like this is another composition I really love. Like I said, I got a little whole thing. These aren't like, they're not that difficult, right? But really what I'm experimenting with when I experiment with these is, what do the colors look like together? Like this piece of paper actually inspired the purchase of this color of paint, which I had never used before, but I got like this mega paper pack, you know? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I really liked it with this green gold color that I already had. So like they're used on a couple of different levels. Do I ever frame them and give this away or sell this? I don't. That doesn't mean that I don't think they're beautiful and I love looking at them. And I do really like the composition that I just made here. It definitely makes me want to glue it down. Like I like it enough that I want to glue it down. I think it has a lot of really good aspects. It's got great tension. It's got great balance. It's got colors that I don't normally use. So I probably will end up keeping it for that alone. So I guess the question and answer is yes, just maybe not in the way that you might mean. Like I use it, you know. This is actually one of my favorite things to do right now is to work with paper like this. I think it feels less permanent. And it's not until I really like it that I glue it down. So I feel like abstract art kind of is this process of constantly having to reinforce your skills, your technical skills. So that when you sit down to actually make a painting, it may only take me 45 minutes to an hour to actually paint a painting, but it's taken, I mean, hours of exploration and work to get to that point because I've worked through so many other different methods of being there. And the longer that I am a painter and the longer that I'm in this field, the more that I realize I constantly have to be working on this. I actually had a problem during COVID. I made all these beautiful tiny little paintings, but other than those tiny little paintings, I wasn't really painting. We were opening up an art gallery. We were doing all these other crazy things. And I just have really come back around to working on the technical aspect of being an abstract painter, really wanting to be good, you know, not just mediocre. But so I'll probably, I'm going to, obviously, as you can see, I'm gluing this one down because I like it. Reminds me of the 80s, which is my favorite. Okay. My glue stick does not like the Gesso paper, though. Let me tell you that.
We lost Cambium's iPhone camera.
Oh, hold on.
It's funny that you say that, Carista. I was thinking the same thing
About
recently about my work, about wanting to really lock down on get better at certain things. So I
Right.
love street scenes, but all week, all I've been doing is practicing cars. Because
Right.
I think my cars could be better. And like, I'm like working on cars and paintings of cars. And like, you know, like it's true. You go through these phases where you're like, okay, I want to figure out, I just want to get this. I want to get this right.
And I want to get,
Whatever that is.
yeah. And that was the thing with the Joseph Albers book. You know, it's actually really hard to read. I read art books. I'm going to tell you guys, I read art books constantly. The Joseph Albers book is really hard to read because it's really technical. It's from the 50s. It's not the same kind of stuff that we do now. And I used to go through and I would read the information on the exercise and then I do the one exercise. And I do that like every day. I did this for a little while. And, you know, what the book is teaching you is just how color interacts with other colors, really, what composition and kind of design technical things. I feel like though, what it spawned in my actual practice was that I came back to my studio and I started asking myself, well, what kind of colors can I mix that are new? How do I create color palettes with more intention? Because I think that where you get lost in abstract art is if you don't have some intention with it, it just turns into kind of whatever, you know? It's the intention.
Same old thing. It's a pattern. I think we all want to recreate patterns all the time.
Right?
Our brain is that way. Recreate patterns when there are none.
Right. So, and it's not that I think I'm the next genius or whatever, but I do think that I'm doing this professionally.
Yeah.
And I want to do it well. And I want to keep growing. And I want people to look at my work and think, oh man, she really grew. And that is, so that's what I've been working on with some of these weird things, you know, these new ways of learning these technical skills. As soon as I get done with this obnoxious process of gluing this down, my paintings are dry. They're really quite beautiful the way they are. So this is going to be a really fun exercise in challenging myself. Sometimes you just got to know when to stop on a painting, which is really, really
Yeah.
hard, right?
That's the hard part. Yeah.
The hard part, yeah, see, this bad boy's all, it's cute. I
I
like
like
it.
it.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah, I think it's a cool guy.
I love the white space in between
know,
the two.
as-
I like how you've used that.
Leah's noticed I'm adding a lot more white space in my paintings.
I love it.
It's hard. It's
It
hard
is.
abstract art because it feels like you're very exposed, right? You also, I think sometimes people think, especially if you're selling it, that you have to work, have worked it really hard to make it worth it.
Mhm.
That's just not always the truth.
Yeah.
Oh, those look beautiful.
Okay.
I think as you get further along, I think it's kind of like working with what you do naturally. Like if you in a representational class, everybody will be working on the same subject. And by the way, those are stunning.
Yeah.
Just had to say that. Everybody's going to be working on the same thing, but they're not going to look the same. You'll use the same principles, but everybody uses their tools a little differently. Everybody lays different marks, different weights.
You know,
so
we're gonna be
that's like, go ahead.
that's the reason we're looking at other abstract artists in future classes, and we're going to be learning about how they make their things, not because I want you to mimic other abstract artists, but because you're going to find things, something that you think is important and impactful in one artist does, you can keep moving forward. Leah's right. You're always going to use your materials differently. As you're developing with abstract art, it more and more comes from within, and you're creating your own language. It's really hard to create your own language. It's really hard when you don't have something visible that you're copying. This is entirely made up, right?
Yeah.
Although it's hard and it's also just there, right? Like on the one, it's like it's more like it's hard to accept your own language. like it's like if you have curly hair, it's hard to accept you have curly hair and not straight hair, and straight hair not, like it's hard to accept what you naturally are.
Right.
That's like the hard thing. It may not be so hard. It's more like recognizing and valuing what makes you you.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. Yeah, I get it.
Okay, so so our first layers on some of these were the drawings, like these are my drawings. Here you can see I kept my drawings. Our second layer was the 3-mark exercise, right? Where we're trying to create the best composition we can with just 3 marks, you know, find balance. And our third layer are these other layers that we've added lots of different things to. I've actually tried really hard to cover up as much of the page as possible. Again, I tend to like to leave white space. Okay, now our last layer. This is the editing layer. This is actually something that the mother of abstract art, Lee Krasner, taught us, is never be afraid to edit your work. Okay, you can do it in a couple of ways, and I'm going to show you 3 different ways to use white paint to do that. Okay. So the first one I'm going to do on this one. Okay. I am a big spatula user. You guys will see me do it a lot. You'll see that my actual work is done almost entirely with spatulas, like the work that I sell. So we're going to be adding negative space to this painting. This can feel stressful, a lot of things. I usually start with, I have a titanium white, the most fluid golden I can get because it's the thinnest. And I'm going to look at this.
Can you
And
explain negative space, just in case anybody here doesn't know it?
negative space is the white space in a painting. So it's not always white though, because
Right.
honestly, negative space can be black. It's the space that you aren't engaged with by adding color or composition to it. Really what it is it's like having an emotional experience that's super intense, and it's the place that people take a breath. Okay. It controls most of the focus, to be really honest with you. And
That is a great description.
it does. It controls most of the focus because it's the space that people actually like process what they're seeing.
Yeah.
You can do it a couple of ways. You can do it like our first exercise where we only added marks and we left a bunch of space. Okay. You can do it these ways in which we're going to add in white paint to create a negative space. A lot of abstract artists really do this a lot. We're going to do it in a couple of different ways. I'm minimalist. I like to add like 1 or 2 really big white marks that cover up a lot of the space, but give it space to breathe. Okay. Again, not really wanting to overdo it too much, but wanting to add that negative space. Okay. The reason that you use a thinner paint or a watered down white paint is that some of the stuff that's underneath, which is really great, still shows through. So you don't lose everything entirely. You just kind of thin the herd, so to say. And I will do this often in a painting that is really beautiful and bold and vibrant. And then I just feel like needs a little bit of air. Okay. So I added 3, which is, you know, again, 3 white stripes to just add a little bit more negative space to this one. What it does is it allows you to focus on this interesting shape that this red stripe is making, you know, before it got lost in the yellow and you couldn't really decipher the difference. But that white mark here allows us to really check that out. It also allows us to spend a little bit more time with some of these lines, which I really like. I'm going to let this dry and I'm going to decide if that was enough. I tend to let things dry in between layers when I'm at this point, because it's the editing process, right? You have to step back.
Can I jump in here for a second, Carissa? Because what you're saying is so crucial. I want to emphasize that this is something that I've said a lot in my representational classes. Painting is about the edges. It's about where one edge meets another edge. Mm-hmm. So you want a variety of edges. So it's where a light mark meets a darker color. It's where a strong mark meets a light mark. She just essentialized for you, and you describe negative space so well from an abstract perspective. This absolutely applies to all painting. Mm-hmm. Paying attention to the edges. Mm-hmm. You're creating variety and variation. A feeling of being able to like rest and then get excited, you know, rest and move around.
And don't be afraid to go off the composition, especially with abstract work. Your marks don't have to only exist on the paper.
Wow.
Sometimes what's magical about it is that mark goes off the paper and could go into infinity. You know what I mean? And it leaves you thinking about that space it's creating. The edges don't have to exist on your paper, which is something I'm actually really experimenting with right now, which is creating really harsh edges in my paintings and then having one mark go entirely off and seeing how I feel about that. We'll see. Another way that people edit is called masking. Generally, if you're going to use the masking method, you're going to come in with a utensil, a drawing utensil, and you're going to do something like the contour drawing that we did. And you're going to draw some kind of shape. Okay, this is still abstract, even if it has some representational aspects. We're not painting like Leah's teaching you to paint. We're just really creating kind of this edges. My studio is really filled with a lot of plants, and so I'm just going to do kind of a planty thing. This is where obsessions, you know, because artists are obsessors. That's what art is obsessing. And we all have the things that we obsess, the shapes that we obsess with. My partner and I both share kind of a weird fascination with chairs that I talked about earlier. A lot of people really like leaves. So I've gone through and I've drawn the outline of some leaves. Now I'm going to use the white to mask in the design. And then keep the color, so to say, where the inside of the design will be. Usually a thicker white is probably a little more beneficial for this type of using white, but, okay. And then we're going to basically whiten the rest of everything. A couple of things on this process. I like to leave the edge, you know, this tiny little edge down here. I like to leave it. I think it's just interesting. I like to see my layers. I want to know where my work went. Also, you know, don't be afraid to be thin about this, and keeping as much of the color of your under layers as you can. Okay. But this style, what it does is the design starts to come through as the under layer is, you can call her. It's dog feeding time, everybody. So that's what it is. Okay, and then we're gonna continue to use this masking around the edges. This style is really good for beginners. It allows you to experiment with making layers, what marks look good on top of what kinds of saturations. I used to keep a design book in my studio where I would keep pieces of paintings that I really liked. If something looked really good, but like the whole composition didn't work. And I wanted to remember that I liked the way that this particular shade of purple looked over this particular shade of green in this mark, so that I could bring it in future iterations, right? That is that point at which you start to have your own visual language, and you have this part of your painting that your collectors and yourself and your friends look at, and they say, oh yeah, that reminds me of so-and-so. So this style of painting allows you to focus and really see how the different marks look individually. You can paint over the edge that you used with your drawing material or not. It's up to you. I kind of tend to go over it a little bit and then keep some of it, never really in a pattern that makes sense. Okay. So this is where that contour drawing comes into play a little bit, right? Not only is it something that loosens you up, but it also allows you a new direction with your work. Okay. I'm going to post a picture of this one when it's done in the WhatsApp app, so you guys can see more clearly how the leaves come through and stuff like that.
That's so cool.
There are a lot of abstract painters that use this as part of their process, but not the entire process, right? So they'll just mask out little tiny drawings or a particular thing that's included. And then,
I love putting on this white.
right?
It's neat, isn't it?
I was like, first I was like, how am I going to do that? And I love it.
That's awesome.
All the
Here-
time,
Yeah.
I'm looking at my work and thinking, if only I just had done this little part as a painting. Like,
Right.
I have a lot of paintings that I finished where I'm like, I should have really just focused on this one small part.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, a lot of people, this is really where like a lot of abstract artists use viewfinders, you know,
Mhm.
the little tiny squares, you know. I have a little plastic one, and you're focusing on one part of something. I did some ship paintings because I live in a port, okay, where the Columbia River meets the Pacific Ocean. We have lots of cargo traffic, lots of big ships coming through. I didn't want to do paintings of ships, but I was enamored with this whole experience of traffic coming through. And so what I would do is I would take a picture of the ship with I actually have a real digital camera. I would print the picture and then focus my viewfinder on just one part of the ship and then use that to create my composition. It allowed me to have ships. Yeah, it allowed me to have ships without having the ships.
And Leslie, that's fantastic. Look at how that white, look at
Thanks. I'm
Yes,
really
Conan.
liking it.
look at how the white has played out in Leslie's composition. It's great.
Oh yeah.
Well, I cheated and I used a bunch of different colors. I just
So use as many colors as you want. Just realize that what happens, the more colors is the more like complex the composition gets,
yeah.
Right. You got to
And
keep
then-
everything in control.
right? That's the hardest part. And then there's how it looks with the leaves and the,
Oh,
That's so cool.
that is really
you
cool.
see where I left the edge, because like I said, I really like to leave the edge. Okay. So this is still, it's somewhat representational. It's still abstract work, but it's somewhat representational. Now, some artists still use a masking process in their paintings, but what they're doing is they're finding pieces of their paintings that they want to focus on, and they're just honing it in. So this particular painting here, I have this really beautiful spot here that you guys can't really see that is yellow, shows through on the blue and the red. That's a spot I'm very interested in keeping. And then, you know, you go through and you pick a couple of your spots. You're going to add your white painting, your white paint. You're going to want to add more water to this and have a more watered down version because you want it to be thin. We really we want to create just a light top that, you know, allows us to keep some of it, but not a lot of our painting. We're not going to keep a lot of it. This was actually really hard for me to learn in the beginning because I felt like I was painting over so many pieces and so many parts of my painting that I loved. Why would I paint over that? You know, what I learned is you allow people to be wowed by certain parts of your painting by giving more space, more negative space, more breathing room. People then can engage more deeply with what's left. So we use the same masking, the same concept, you know, kind of thinnish paint. And
If you put a mist over it, they have to look harder at it, so it engages them more.
it engages them more. And, you know, sometimes it's just like less stuff to distort you, right? This is something I'm actually thinking a lot about with social media. Is social media helpful or negative? I don't know that answer right now, you know, but it's a hard question. And so I'm trying to have different relationship with it. I love sharing my work. I love access to sharing my work, right? But I also feel like as an artist who needs to be highly engaged in my process right now, that I need a little bit more brain space for that.
Mhm.
And so how do we find that balance? Well, I mean, it's a little bit like this kind of process of painting here, where how do we give people more brain space to engage more completely with the work? Okay. I was pretty gutsy here. I really went through and
Yeah.
whited out a lot. You know, it's because I want what's left to really make an impact. And I still left the edges because, like I said, I love that line where the color is, you know,
That blue is gorgeous.
right? And
Yeah.
it looks different when you give it some space. People have the ability, it's not just one big blotch.
Excuse me.
So personally, something that I like to do with this process, okay, so I like to water down my paint a little bit. This is a personal thing. I just, you know, water down my paint a little bit. Okay. The wateriest white top. And then I kind of put it at the top and I really didn't water it down enough so that it creates drips. So that it doesn't look like I just painted it on, because I can be weird about brush strokes and things like that. Sometimes I'll even do this. We're going to just do it this way. Okay. And then it keeps my white, but it shakes it up a little bit. And I think that is, for me, that's just a surface thing that I do. It also kind of, you know, where you choose to do that opens up new, smaller, brighter things. And when this dries in a couple of minutes, because it's really like light, I will send you guys a picture of it and you can see how it looks, you know, more clearly on the app. So, you know, we have, you know, 20 minutes to work through some of these processes on your own and to share them with us. If you have any questions, I'm going to continue working. I have one more. I have not decided what I'm going to do with it. I feel meh about it. So something's got to happen. You know, and share your progress photos on the WhatsApp so that we can take a look and share in this experience together. I will send some photos of these ones.
Just out of curiosity, how are you guys enjoying this process? Don't all speak at once. Tell me.
I'm loving it.
Ha!
I'm wishing I'd used acrylic paint because the watercolor, the white just doesn't work.
Yeah, the white's hard on watercolor. I actually will often do this exercise with watercolor and then use white acrylic on top. It used to be a choice, or you always have the option of white gesso if you don't have white acrylic, if you have gesso hanging around.
That's a good
I don't know why I went through a phase in my life where I had so much gesso hanging around, but I did. Yeah, and you know, I like to, like I said, I like to use watercolor on top of acrylic because what is going on in there?
Yeah.
I share my space with the weirdest things. Audrey just took a pair of gold wings and went next door into the gallery. Maybe there will be a performance at our opening this weekend. Funny little life I lead.
So this is, as you guys are putting this together, what I'm thinking about is simplicity.
Yeah.
Right? Like we want to throw everything we have, like you want to throw every color on, you want to you want to cover up every piece. You want to draw every blade of grass. You want to do every kind of circle, right? Whatever it is that you're working on. And so this is about some letting go, but then also stepping back and going, okay, what's actually working and what's not? That's the intellectual process that she's talking about. It's very intentional.
Very intentional. And this is like,
that's, wow, I love that. What if you were mad about it before, the white just really,
it makes a difference, doesn't it?
Makes a huge difference.
Some of my best compositions worked because of the white. And I actually don't use a lot of white. You know, some artists do this in a lot of ways. Lisa Onstead, who is a local Portland artist,
yeah,
stunning.
yeah,
She
love
did
her stuff.
Masking fluid which is a watercolor tool. that
Oh,
allows-
where she puts it on before she starts painting?
and then she does it in between layers. So she'll
Oh,
do like the
cool.
process like we did with these, right? Where we created a bunch of layers. Then she'll come in with a masking fluid, mask out parts of it, and then wash the whole thing like we did with the white, pull up the masking fluid, and those layers exist in their permanent form.
Wow. I wondered how she did that. That makes so
That's-
much sense.
Repeatedly. Like, although this new work that she's got out right now, she seems to have pulled away from that a little bit and is just using this white masking process. But, you know, editing is the key to successful abstract work.
Right. Editing.
Editing, going in, figuring out what's working and what's not working. You know, along the lines with Flora Bowley's comment about if you love to do something, do it repeatedly. She also forces you in her classes to mask 95% of your painting. You get to keep 5%. You have to find the 5% you love. And what you're going to do is you're going to cover the rest of it. You have to stop feeling like it's precious. You have to
Yeah.
stop feeling like it's this thing that has to be protected or hoarded. And
Right.
you have to let go.
Right.
That's the main reason I wanted to take this class is I'm always like, if I do this to the background of this figure study, am I going to ruin it? You know,
Right.
and I'm just like, I want to get out of that. I hate that, you know, and right now I'm like, I'm really liking these 3 pieces and I'm like, okay, I want to just come back and look at them later. And I'm just going to ask you, Krista, is like, do you do that often with your larger pieces?
Always.
Just leave it, or do you work
Yep.
straight through? Yeah.
I make a joke that I got a bad kid corner. Where my paintings go to live for a little while. You know, it comes about in a couple of ways. You have to step away from it. You have to let it dry entirely because acrylic paint especially looks completely different when it's dried. So you have to let things dry. You have to know when to step away. And then you come back into it and you go, okay, this is working or this isn't working. I will have paintings that live in my bad kid corner for a year. And then something will have changed in my practice. I will have learned a new skill. And I go, oh, that one painting can be reworked now. I can fix it. I also will rip up paintings and turn them into collage pieces.
Okay. Yeah.
I keep it. I'm very privileged to have acquired 2 very large flat files this year. And I have 3 drawers of just pieces of my paintings that are collage pieces. And, you know, preciousness is a buzzkill for an artist.
Yeah.
It stops you from creating. That's the
Mhm.
reason that piece is sitting behind you and you're not working on it is because
Yeah.
you're afraid to work on it.
Yeah.
Also, you know, the other perspective of that is, especially in your early underpaintings, don't be afraid to stop and keep it. If you
Yeah.
love it,
Yeah.
you love it, you
Yeah.
know? So if you're like the first 3 layers, I did 4 marks and all of a sudden I feel like it's perfect. Why keep working it? Just
Mhm.
let it. Be like, this is it, it's beautiful, and move on. You know, we can work, abstract can be 3 marks, perfection, and it could be 5,000 marks and finally come into something that's its own being. I also know for myself, I experienced this part of painting right before it gets really good, where I really hate it.
Ah,
I mean, I like
yep.
really hate it. I always make a joke, and this is the part that they say art is like a hero's journey. This is my part of my hero's journey, is that it has to be ugly before I can love it.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's very much do the things, give them time to breathe, hate them for a little while, come back to them. You know, it's a whole process. We're gonna work on mark making, and mark making sometimes is a thing that has to be done, you know, after it's completely dried. You have to come back for some kinds of mark making.
Mhm.
I agree, Tashween. I think she's touching on, Tashween has written, I don't have materials right now, but love watching this so much. I already feel like Karista's lectures are making me look at art differently, and I studied art history. That's
Yeah.
what we want. That's what we want you to do.
Yeah.
This is what we're aiming for. And Nina, I really like it. I like this piece that you're working on. I like all of them.
I like all of
Can you tell what it is, the two images? Because I think I'm doing more representational watercolor.
Is it a vase, a coffee cup?
It's a mug. The handle broke. It's
The
a metal
mug.
mug.
Yeah, totally.
Krista, and what's behind the mug?
A vase?
It's yellow. Think of fruit.
Oh, it's a banana?
It's a bunch of bananas.
That's a bunch of bananas. Neat.
I love that color though.
It's great. I like the
Yeah.
way you're layering color. It feels, I don't think it feels very unique to you. Like, I like that. I like the sort of grays. I'm really into grays right now. So, I mean, I absolutely love the fluorescent red. Like, there's no way you can't fall in love with that. But the grays are kind of, they're kind of exciting.
Grays are hard, right? They're they can be hard to work with. They're so
That's my favorite color to work with. I'm not good with color. Color is not I don't love color. So this is it's going to be interesting for me.
Well, this is you. You're still, your sense of color is still coming out. Your own.
That's actually some of the hardest abstract work is only working in neutrals,
Right.
Black, white, and gray, because when you take out hue and value and you take out color, where are you? Well, you're really focused on what you're doing. I actually did a black and white project. I loved it. It was some of the best work I've made. People loved the work. And they really like my color stuff. That's really what people are attracted to. But the black and white stuff was a really interesting process. It really challenged me.
I bet they are great. I would love to see those. I bet they are great.
Yeah,
If you can find any examples, could you send them across, Krista? Not right now, but just anytime.
Yeah, I'll see if I can locate them. They were from when I was still living in Portland, so it's been a bit. But
yeah,
I have pictures of everything. I have 40,000 photos on my phone.
Love to see it. One
of the things I really like.
I love all the color. I just don't feel comfortable working in it for whatever reason.
Some people have told me that. I think it's a bold statement, I also always encourage people, if it makes you uncomfortable, do more of it. That was my thing with the black and white. I don't actually include a lot of black in my paintings. It feels so finite and just, so I forced myself to do a black and white project so that I could get better at it and include it in the future when I wanted to, right?
I love how you're scraping away the white now.
That's the nicest thing about the scraper is that you do have control over that how thick you want it to be. You having a towel next to it and blotting it is pulls up the extra stuff that you're pulling off. It's nice because it really uncovered this spot right here that previously wasn't there. Wow. And it looks really beautiful with kind of this muted background. This process of masking, you could do one layer of masking or you could do 5. Like, it's really about, what's working and not working for you. And you can also always add more color. That's the cool part, right? Sometimes I will, sometimes especially if I'm like, I need one, like that surprise, right, that I told you guys about. This painting is primarily pink, except for this beautiful dark line of dark blue.
Yeah.
And I would be like, okay, what color of blue, what kind of blue can I add that will pull from that darkness, but be very unique to the moment? So often I have mark making tools like the Neocolor crayons or oil pastels. They're always my last mark. And they're really meant to be like, how can I pull something out just a little bit? Just push it a little bit further. This one, I don't have it here because it's at my home studio, but I have a baby blue like crayon. And it's always very interesting to put like super light baby blue on top of this neon yellow to pull from this dark blue. And that would probably be where I would focus my last little marks.
about your scraper. Where do you get one like that?
Hardware store. It's a drywall scraper. The
Okay.
dollar store, any kind of place that sells kind of cheap plastic tools for drywall.
I just got a set of 3 different sizes for $1 at the dollar store, so.
Right there, right?
Oh,
And
there you go.
I also want to state, so they come in metal versions too. I don't think the metal are as good as the plastic ones, mainly because the plastic ones have some give and they have a little bit of balance that doesn't tear up your paper. If it's too rigid, it's going to tear up your paper, right? Some other options though for scraping sources, old credit cards are my favorite, and they've always been my favorite. They're the perfect size, they fit in your hand, they still have this hard surface, they have a little bit of that bend that we're talking about that makes it a lot better. Sometimes expensive mailers that come in the mail that are like marketing things, like Spectrum is the worst about sending plasticky like mailers to get their internet. Folded in half are often really good too. So
Okay. Anything at home, because I'm in Canada, but we have a lockdown with the
oh,
stay-at-home
you guys are
order.
super locked down right now. Do you
Yes,
have spatula?
yeah,
Do you have spatula? Because honestly,
Yeah.
most you have options. They come in bamboo or they come in silicone. I always use a spatula.
I have a few. What do you, like a big, small one?
I would, I've used both. The one that I use the most, I'm trying to think if I have a picture, if I have it, is 2 different sizes, and I got it from the dollar store, right?
Okay. You wouldn't cook with it then after?
Oh,
No.
Right here. So I used this is the size, it's your normal spatula.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, what's nice about it, especially if it's silicone, I've used wood ones too, is, you have a little bit of that give. And that give really seems to be the thing that helps allow you to control what's happening with the paint. This one is super used. It was from the dollar store. It's a Betty Crocker, like,
Great.
Yeah. And it's awesome because it has 2 sides. So it does
Wow.
anything, that you can manipulate. I'm trying to think of what other ways, because what happens is often for me is that I will be working in a coffee shop or something, traveling, and I have forgotten a scraper and I have to create them, which happens all the time to me for some reason. And that's where I've learned credit cards or like folded over pieces of paper and stuff like that can work. But I think these are a little bit better quality and more consistent.
That's great. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
So what did you do with the paper? I missed that. With the paper,
What?
did you glue it down and paint over it?
I tape it. So technically it's called stretching, which I'm not really sure why it's called stretching, but I tape it down. Mainly also, like the thing about taping it down for me, and you can use any kind of masking tape, like blue tape or like regular masking tape works. I like the line, around the edge too. So the tape allows me to do that. I also gesso my paper. We talked a little bit about this in the last class. So I tape it down first, then I gesso what is open, right? And let the gesso dry, but I use a clear gesso.
Why don't you use white? You don't.
Because honestly, white is a lot thicker as a gesso. It's a texture thing. You could totally use white. People use white all the time. The clear gesso, also what happens often that I like is that I used to actually use my scraper to gesso. So I would pull the gesso down this way. And what would happen is stuff would come off of my scraper into the gesso on my paper and kind of start with marks that already existed. I like that part of abstract art, reacting to the moment to fix a problem that is occurring. So sometimes I like clear gesso for that reason. Any kind of weird mark that's on your paper is still visible.
That's great. I have half a gallon of white gesso. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, and I would use it honestly. I think white gesso is better than white acrylic.
Yeah.
For masking and stuff like that. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, and I have an artist friend who loves to mix it with charcoal, white gesso. Like, it's its own thing, but it is useful. And that's the thing, is a lot of people have it in gallons, right?
Yeah. That's great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'm all about using what you have and making it work for yourself.
Yeah, I really can't buy a lot right now with the, unless, I did watch part of your first video and I know how much you love Amazon.
Yeah.
So,
It's impossible during the beginning. So I don't live in Portland, and we don't have access to a lot of things where I live. I live in a small coastal town, and sometimes the only way to get something is Amazon. So
yeah,
it's impossible. It's like this beast we can't get away from. We do work really hard. We spend about 90% of our income locally, but we do have to go with Amazon sometimes. Tasha,
no, that helped because I was looking at I love that idea of the soluble graphite. And our local art stores probably could deliver if I still have a lot of money, but they don't have the Prima. They don't have that brand except on Amazon.
yeah, and you guys have Art Graph though, right? Because I feel like that you guys got it before we did. Art Graph actually has a water soluble graphite that's wonderful too.
Art craft. Okay, I'll look for that.
Yeah. If you look, the Amazon list that I included in the last class links has a link to the water soluble Art Graph, I think, in it. So it's an option as well.
Okay, I didn't get it because it doesn't show up. Can someone send it again?
Yeah, I'll find it and send it again to you, and I
Okay.
probably put it in the WhatsApp app thing too. And I did create the Amazon list so you had access to some of the brands, because I know that it won't translate to all countries. So we're gonna work around it.
Okay, thank you.
Books I do read a lot of art books, beginners and favorites. So I think that Danielle Krishna's book, where is it? I'm trying to remember the name of it. A big art book, hold on. A big important art book, Now with Women, is exceptional. Mainly because not only does she include a bunch of women, but the jealous curator, who is Danielle Krishna, is known for including lots of mediums. And she has exercises in here that you can try from each of the artists, not each of them, but some of them. She also wrote a book on creative blocks, and it's all exercises. And I think that's fantastic. So anything by Danielle Krishna is always delightful. Eva wrote a book, Eva Milgo Oliver wrote a book called Paint Alchemy. I think that's a really good book. And honestly, Flora Bowley wrote 3 books, and they're really good. Those 3 books were kind of my core beginner pack for a really long time. I actually went to college for sculpture. I didn't go for painting, and ended up teaching myself to paint. And Flora's book was a big part of that. And then I got to take a class with her, which was great. And then I created my own style. I kept what I needed from her, and then I moved on with my own stuff. So those would be the top 3 books I would suggest. I do read a lot of art books. I'm also reading a book about Hilma F. Klint, because I think she's crazy.
Yeah.
I love the idea of mystical artwork and just that whole thing. You know, we have an art gallery that only shows underrepresented artists, and I tend to stick to following women artists and or underrepresented artists. It's just a taste, you know. We actually are talking about carrying a small selection of books in our gallery because, like I said, you know, we're in a small town. If it's not here, you have to order it on the internet. And the other 2 bookstores in town, which are both really small, don't carry female artists. They carry books about male artists. And, you know, I I just can't get stuck there. You know, also what book I picked up recently? I thought of you, Leah.
Yeah.
I picked up Alice Neal's book.
Oh,
The
yes.
Method. So beautiful.
So
beautiful.
beautiful. So beautiful.
I'm gonna add this picture. I added a little bit of the yellow back in on top of the
Love
white.
it.
You guys will see that it's a stunner. Does anybody have any last minute
Ooh.
questions for our class ends?
Marcel, Rebecca, I just want to say I love Rebecca and Marcel's pieces. They just came across. I like how they use the white. It's beautiful.
Oh, I love
Isn't that
this one. I'm
neat?
assuming it's Marcel.
Marcel, the one with the
Yeah.
blue and the yellow.
Yeah.
Hey guys, challenge to do that because it was a base watercolor. So with, as you were saying, Krista, about the watered down acrylic, it kind of effed me up in terms of the colors on the base. But
Mhm.
if I was to do it again, that's why you can start to see the paint marks on the right-hand side.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry, my video is not on. So I'm just wondering, words of advice if you were to keep a watercolor base.
So do you remember, I don't know if you remember last week, we talked about hairspray. So
Oh, yes.
hairspray is what I would do.
Hairspray.
That was how you wanted to do it. Because what will happen is the hairspray will seal and waterproof your watercolor. So then your colors won't run. They won't start doing weird things, which is what watercolor is supposed to do. They will just stay where they
Right.
are. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
We
Alice
are, believe
Neal.
it or not, we're past class time. Do you want to? But I don't,
Kathleen, I showed you the list that you just saw Alice Neal's work.
Mhm.
I would love to see it live. It's on my list someday.
yeah.
Okay, well, everybody, next week we're going to have more fun. And I can't wait to see you guys if you're here.
It's wonderful, Krista. So great. This is exactly what we've been needing. Hey, Marcel, I'm going to send you a Zoom link in about 5 minutes if you still want to meet. Let's not stay on this one. I'll send you a new one.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Yep.
Enjoy your day, everybody.
This was
Thank
great.
you.
You guys did amazing. So fun.